Ed, just on that and the general theme of the conversation between yourself and Jamie there, rereading Stephen Covey recently, and he talks about efficiency versus effectiveness. And we often fall into the trap of trying to get humans to be efficient, as opposed to, efficiency is more related to systems. And we should be focused much more on effectiveness and with the human component. So when it comes to implementing the deep and narrow team structure, how do we avoid that trap of falling into being efficient and just trying to get this done, quickly and overnight so we can tick the box, versus being effective and kind of hand holding people through this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Being efficient is just about doing something quickly and efficiently, getting it out the door. But when you're dealing with people, that doesn't always work like that. So coming from a grinding perspective, we've always done it efficiently. We're quick, we're efficient, we're accurate, work's done, it's out the door. But when you're managing people, you've got to be effective, because people are all different and they have different take-up rates of time to take things up, and they have feelings and emotions, and you've got to manage all of that through. And some people, I call them, rubber cups. You can bounce them on the ground and they'll bounce back up, but others are crystal glasses, so you can, bounce them on the ground and they crack. So you've got to be aware that you've got a myriad of different personalities. And in order to be effective, you've got to do it slowly. You've got to understand that people will come on board at different rates and not to rush it. So, I've seen firms who, they see the light, and then, they understand what's going on and they just want to implement it like yesterday. And then they don't get the support from the staff, and then they say, oh, it doesn't work, and that's the biggest problem. So if you follow what we've said about bringing them along with you, then when you're having those one-on-one meetings with them, if 80% of them are pushing back on you, then pick your battles. So let it go and approach it another time when the timing's a bit better, and then you have another one-on-one with them, and you do that progressively over time. And what you'll find is, from the most negative people who are pushing back, once you've had one meeting, they push back. You have a second meeting, they push back less, and a third meeting, they'll push back less, and then eventually they know you're serious, right? Whereas at first they think it's just a throwaway line, right? But the more meetings you have with them, the more they'll come around. I've never met anybody who hasn't come around at the end, but it could have taken a long time to come around. And Tim's got a good example of a particular client manager that took a couple of years. She wouldn't even change software. So the whole firm changed software to Xero, and she still stayed on MYOB. So that's how slow she was in moving across. And then eventually she took on Xero and said, oh, that was the best thing out, and I should have done it earlier. And same as the team structure, she wouldn't embrace the team structure. She was the last one to do it. And now she says that was the best thing out, I should have done it earlier. But, don't when you're baking a cake, you don't put the mixture in the oven and turn the heat right up to 800 degrees. You be sensitive to the needs of the individuals that you're dealing with, and then you go as slow or as fast as the individuals are going at. And obviously, the more conviction you have in it, and the more you prosecute the case and explain it, and be very sure about your path forward, the more they'll then be convinced that that's the right thing to do. But yes, take your time, and only when you get 80% supporting you, then you have that group session. Once you have that group session, it's formal, and everybody's moving forward. Even the laggards, the handful of negative people will come across, and because the majority of everybody's going. Now, having said that, you will lose one or two people. when you do this process, and that's okay. And then you start to, you know, get this the right structure in place and so forth. And the people that won't fit, it's only generally a handful. You know, depending on how big your team is, they'll, one or two will move on. If you've got a very small team, you won't lose anybody. But if you've got, you know, 20 people, you might lose a handful. But that's part of the process. So don't get discouraged by that. And of course, don't get discouraged when someone pushes back. And then, you know, the worst thing that can happen is someone is negative and pushes back, and then you think, oh, I better not do this anymore. And then you revert back to what you were doing.